let's see. Okay, so now I am just sharing. Meet Jim Thomas. I'm going to tag you in here. And so everybody you know now is going to see you hanging out with this crazy Lutheran.
They won't think anything about it.
Well, good. Then you're my kind of guy. All right. And I'll keep this open just because there may be people that will comment or, things like that. And it's nice to have it available. But here we go. Is that your phone? Or something? Making noise? Did you hear? Maybe it was outside.
Could have been. But just in case, I'll turn it off.
Okay. There it is. Yeah.
It was. Power off.
All right. You ready?
Ready.
Here we go. Hey, y'all. Pastor Emil here with another episode of Sweet Jesus. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter. And I'm excited today to have a guest, somebody I met really only a week ago, Jim Thomas. Jim Thomas is the president of Thomas Pump. But that's not really why we're here together. We're here together because I met him at an SMA meeting, Slidell Ministers Association meeting, and I got to hear him talk about some fascinating things that he's doing to share the gospel and to minister to people in need around the world. And I'm just excited to have him here with us. So welcome, everyone, Jim Thomas. We brought in a large crowd to welcome you appropriately.
Thank you.
And Jim, you had so many amazing things, and we were starting to talk about some of those things before we got in here. And but first, let's just hear about your own testimony, your own faith. What makes Jesus so sweet? What is it that makes Jesus so sweet to you?
Well, I think that basically Jesus has become my life, in that if you'd have told me 25 years ago that I'd be involved in a prison ministry anywhere in the world, let alone someplace 10,000 miles away, I would have said, you're crazy. Because I had no interest in prison ministry at all. And then through some miraculous events, I became involved in the Ghana prison ministry, and it has become really important to me. And to see the things that Jesus accomplished, not only in the prison ministry, but in other areas in Ghana and with other people, it's just amazing. And so that's what it means to me.
So what it sounds like you're saying, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but and I'm saying it this way, I'm going to highlight it because I think there are people that have a certain kind of view of Christians and Christianity. And what it sounds like you're saying is that Jesus makes life surprisingly exciting and adventurous and puts you in situations and in circumstances and places around the world that you never dreamed you would be. So Jesus isn't just for stodgy people that are boring and just sit around the house all day and do nothing.
Well, I always relate things to a story. And my favorite story in the world is about Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa they were filming her in the streets of New Delhi or Calcutta or wherever she was in India. And they had come to Thursday afternoon and they had asked every conceivable question that this reporter could ask. And this poor young reporter said, "Mother Teresa, how often do you pray?" And she says, "Oh, I pray all the time." And the reporter said, "You pray all the time? What on earth do you say?" And she said, "I don't say anything. I listen." And if you listen to what the Lord would tell you, you just open your mind and open your heart and listen for what the Lord, he will lead you to so many things. And I've been on a plane when I thought, okay, Lord, you've asked me to witness to this person sitting next to me. You have to give me an opening. I cannot. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at this. And the next thing out of that person's mouth is, would you help me? I need you to talk to me or hold my hand or do something. And I over and over, I think about Mother Teresa and how she listens. And when I pray, I don't listen very well. I have a problem that I want to take before the Lord, and I think, gee, this is multiple choice. Lord, which is it? Is it A, B, or C? Because I know the three answers, and a lot of times it's none of the above. Yeah. And so now I've changed my prayer life a little bit, and I listen to what he has to say. And if you listen, you'll find that he'll take you to things that you never, ever thought that you would ever do in your entire life, but exciting things.
So 25 years ago, you said you never would have dreamed that you'd be in prison ministry, let alone someplace halfway around the world. Where were you at 25 years ago that made this so inconceivable? You know, if going back to who you were 25 years ago or before that, why would it have been so crazy for you to be thinking?
Well, I think it would have been crazy because I was familiar with prisons in the U.S., mm-hmm. and they are a lot different in the rest of the world. And the prisons here, I just couldn't get wrapped around, I'm going to help this person, because to me, most of them in prison in the U.S. don't need help and don't want help, or they need it, certainly, but they don't want it. Mm-hmm. And it's just that's something that I was called to do. And when I went to Ghana, I found out that they related to me because I was different. Why did you come here anyway? What is it that you want? You obviously, people want something and I wanted nothing. I wanted them to give me what they had to offer, and I think that was the crux of what I was doing there. I was becoming someone who could be a messenger for Jesus, whereas in this country I couldn't, or at least not in the prison in this country.
Well, certainly not the way that you have become a presence out in Ghana. Tell me about that. Tell me how you got into prison ministry in Ghana.
Well, I have a brother. I call him my brother, and he's a brother in Christ, Seth Ayeti, and he came to this country because professionals in Ghana leave their home country and go to a different country. Maybe they go to Saudi Arabia, they go to the UK, or they go to Europe, or they come to America because they can make 10 times the amount of money that they make in Ghana. And this is how they support their families and how they go about it. And they're much more frugal than we are because they save that money, whereas we would blow it all. And Seth came here and he taught at Tulane University. He was a anatomy professor. He was dean of the anatomy department at the University of Ghana, and he taught at Tulane, and they got a world-class, Cambridge-educated professor at what I gather, I think in my own mind is probably half price.
Wow.
What they would have to pay somebody else. But it was still 10 times what he could make in Ghana. So he came, and while he was here, some friends, he was going to St. Charles Presbyterian Church in New Orleans, and he came to Slidell, and he came with a family to spend the weekend, and it came to Sunday, and they were Catholic. And he said, well, I'd really like to go to a Presbyterian church. And so they looked us up on the internet, and I was a member of the Presbyterian Church. And when I say we, as a Southern all-white congregation, noticed Seth the moment he walked in, because he was like the ace of spades. He is that black.
Yeah.
And he came in and rushed right out. And he came, then he came to move to Slidell and stay, and he came and worshiped with us. And for the first few weeks, he didn't mix with us, but then we became friends with him through another miracle, I think. His wife came to visit him, and she was here for the last weekend that she was here, and she'd been here for 3 weeks. And they were looking for a dress for his mother for her to take back, and they went to a dress store in the mall in Slidell, and that's where the clerk who waited on them said to them, aren't you the gentleman who's been worshiping at the Presbyterian Church? And it was the wife of the pastor.
Wow.
And she said, the pastor, David Sebest, has been trying to get a hold of you, and he didn't know how to get in touch with you. Would you come to dinner with us Saturday night?
Wow.
And this was on a Thursday or Friday or something. And so they did. And so when Seth went back to Ghana, he went back with the understanding that whatever was going to be his mission in the world, in Ghana, then we would support him. The Sunday school class at the Presbyterian Church would support him. Well, Seth went back, and I think that the Presbyterian Church, who had he had the dual role of being a pastor and the dean of the medical school, they were a little bit, what I say, jealous of him. So they said, your mission is the prisons. And he said, wow, that's great, because my mother always wanted me to visit prisoners and hospitals and things. Which prison? And they said, all of them. Oh, that was 43, I think, prisons at that time. And so he had started a prison ministry with 2 other gentlemen under a palm tree in Ghana in 1993. And this was in 1994. I went to Ivory Coast, which is right next to Ghana, because Thomas Pump also builds cableway systems for bananas. And we had a banana farm there. And I said, well, I'll go visit Seth while I'm just right there, so I might as well well, I didn't know anything about visas and they said, you can't go because you can't get a visa. It would take 2 or 3 weeks to get a visa alone. And I said, no, I don't have 2 or 3. So I went to the embassy in Ivory Coast, the Ghana embassy, and I said, I want to get a visa. And the gentleman said, what do you want to go to Ghana for? And I said, I'm checking up on this missionary who came to visit us, and he's with the prison ministry. Well, it turned out this young man was a Christian, and this was 10 o'clock in the morning. And he said, can you come back at 2 o'clock this afternoon? I said, certainly, I can come back. And so I went back, and he had my visa ready for me. Now, if you don't think that that's the doing of the Lord, then, and I went there, and when I stepped off the plane, and this is not like you step off the plane and go in through a gangway. You walk down the steps and you hit the ground. When my feet hit the ground, I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit like I had never felt it before. And I thought, what in the world am I doing in this foreign country? And Seth has responsibility for the prison ministry. Well, I soon learned within a matter of 3 or 4 days, the Lord used me to, the Ghanaian people are wonderful people, but when they see a roadblock, they stop. And that's not my disposition. Fortunately or unfortunately,
stubborn American.
Yes,
right?
yeah. I see that you go through it, around it, over it, under. You get somehow you get an answer, and the Lord used me mightily in 3 or 4 days to come up with what we called the dream list and the wish list. And the wish list was things that we could provide immediately, and that would be clothes and food and medical supplies. And the dream list was what we could supply, what we dreamed about. And that was a car, an automobile, or a vehicle, an office, a team in each region, a staff of whatever it would take. And within 10 years, the Lord had provided all that.
Wow.
That we had dreamed about. And we had a building and we have an office. And that's another funny story that I'll tell, because Seth called and he said, we want to name the building after you. And I said, I forbid it. You cannot. I don't want my name on anything that you do. And he said, yeah, we want to call it. And I said, no. And so I said, I'll get the church together and we'll come up with a name for the building, for the office. And it wasn't, a couple of weeks later, he called back and he said, or he sent me a text, or somehow he got a message to me, we have the name, don't worry about it anymore. We're going to name it after a school that we all went to when we were young, when we were in grade school. And I said, okay, fine. Well, I didn't need to say I did not ask what the name of that school was, and I should have asked, because when I got there for the dedication of the office, there was this huge sheet over the name of the office, and I sensed that there was something going on, but I wasn't sure what it was. Well, when it came to unveil the name of the office, it was the St. Thomas office, because they had all gone to the St. Thomas school. Well, it's still named the St. Thomas House today.
Wow.
And they think it was named after me, but I said, no, it's named after a school.
Well, they got a way around your objections, I guess, right?
Indeed.
So tell me a little bit more about what happens in the ministry, some of your experiences. You mentioned being familiar with U.S. prisons and having this understanding of what happens in prisons, as generally the people aren't looking for help, or they kind of have everything they need. Legally, they have a lot of legal protections as far as what they get, what's available to them. What's different in Ghana, and why is it that you keep kind of coming back?
We had a gentleman who was in the condemned prison, and he was a world famous musician, and his name is G-Man, and he, by a lot of different acts, he killed a taxi driver accidentally, but still they sent him to the condemned prison, and he was condemned to die. And by a miracle, he was then released, and his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, and then eventually was commuted. Well, he came to the United States and became a pastor, and he works in New York City, and he works in Rikers Island.
Wow.
And he tells them that their prison is like the Hilton. They're staying at the Hilton Hotel.
Wow.
And they didn't believe him until he showed them pictures of the prisons in Ghana. And in Ghana, they will have a room designed for maybe 25 or 24 people, and there might be 70 in that cell. And they sleep head to foot because they only have 1 foot of space to lie down in. So they lie on their side, and they're head to foot, and there's 70 of them lined up. And at 5 o'clock at night, they close the front door of the cell, and they open it at 5 o'clock the next morning. And it's pitch black night in there. There are no windows, no nothing. So if you have to use the facilities during the night, you are bound to step on somebody. Yeah. And then there's going to be a fight. And so every night is just, and you typically learn to keep to yourself and don't do that. And so he then explained to the people, you have it made here in the U.S., in the prisons. And while he ministers to them, he tells me, yes, they do need to hear the gospel message in Jesus Christ, and they do need that. But I'm just not drawn to that yet. And I listen still, and someday perhaps I'll go and do that, but I don't know what the Lord has in store.
You had told a story about a gentleman that I thought was pretty powerful. The reception that you've received at some of these prisons. It was a story about a man who was praying for you.
Yeah, when we commissioned a mushroom project and a snail project, and there were about 500 people in the main yard in this prison, a medium security prison, and they have 2 marvelous choirs. They sing all 4 parts, harmony, and they're incredible. Well, off in a distance, we heard someone else singing a choir, and I thought to myself, how rude of them to interrupt our program, only to find out later that was the men in the condemned prison, and they weren't allowed to come out of the condemned prison. And I said to myself, thank you, Lord, for the 2x4 up the side of my head.
Yeah.
And I made it a pledge and a promise to myself that I would go and visit them. Well, I asked about that, and the gentleman who was the Director General of Prisons said, absolutely not, because nobody gets to visit those. Nobody from outside the prison or outside the country can visit the condemned prison. And first, let me explain how the condemned prison works. You never know what your execution day is. It might be tomorrow. It's just the executioner says, today we're going to execute 8 people, and these are the 8, and he randomly picks 8. Well, they have not executed anyone since 1995. And so I kept going, and I've been to Ghana 27 times. Wow. And I go at least once a year. And so I kept asking every time that I went, I want to go to the condemned prison. Well, when I went to that prison, the officer in charge, the OIC, said, you've always asked me, and you've been a good friend of mine, so today I'm going to let you go. And we went that day, and from then on, I felt like I had permission to go, pushy Americans. So I went, and they weren't allowed to talk to us. We could talk to them, but they could not talk to us, and we couldn't interact at all. And finally, one day, a gentleman stood up and he said, I'd like to address them if I could. And Seth and I were there together. And he said, this is directed at, and the officer in charge said to him, okay, I'll let you address them. And he said, this is directed at Uncle Jim. And he said, he said, I've been here 12 years in this condemned prison, and I've been abandoned by my family and my friends, and indeed the government. I've been abandoned by everybody, but you, Uncle Jim, have visited me more than anybody has ever visited. And so every day of every day I begin my day on my knees praying for you.
Mm.
And I nearly collapsed when he said that, because to think that of all the things that I have, and here's someone who has nothing and has very little hope even, but yet he prays for you. And then my life has certainly changed because of that. And I look back on it and I say, gee, I wonder if that's why this happened, because this gentleman prayed for me.
Yeah.
And it was very, very moving.
Yeah, the whole story, there's so much that we could pick apart and look at and learn from, just the 2x4. That idea that we're just so annoyed by people that God places around us. And maybe there's a story there that we don't know. And God wants us to learn something, or he has work for us to do that's going to end in a powerful story like that.
Well, the 2x4 is I felt the 2x4 several times. In fact, one of the first instance when I went to Ghana, I had the Sunday school class had asked me to call Seth and tell him I was coming, and what should I bring? I'm coming over all this way. Certainly I should bring. Well, the Sunday school class then decided that I should take this movie camera and give it to Seth, and he could take movies of the prison ministry and send them back. And so I asked Seth, I said, is there something that I can bring for you? Well, in the meantime, they told me about the movie camera. So I called him back and I said, did you think any more about what I said? And I was just about to tell him that I was going to bring the movie camera when he said, yes, you could bring me a flashlight. And I thought, thank you, Lord, for that 2x4 up the side of my head again.
Our grand plans, grand ideas, right?
And power is not stable and goes out several times a day and during the night, and you might be listening to the radio or watching TV and the power goes out and you're sitting there in the dark and it's pitch black night and there are no lights of any kind. When the lights go out, it is dark and you cannot see the hand in front of your face. So if you don't have a flashlight, you're in pretty bad shape.
Yeah. The things that we think are so important, the things that we think are necessary or blessings and things that we can do for other people, even nothing compared to what the actual needs are.
No,
sometimes.
You're right. But yet they get along. And I always like to say the people of Ghana wake up in the morning and say, Lord, what is it that you have for me to do today? And they spend all day listening for that answer. And then whatever it is, they do it. And my friend Seth tells me that that's changing in Ghana as it becomes more known and recognized and people become, let's say, more affluent.
Yeah. Affluenza
Yes.
is kind of a disease, unfortunately. Probably one of the biggest problems we've got here. And I think what you're doing helps remind, I'm sure you, certainly me, and folks that are listening, how good we've got it, and that maybe a better response is not to just live it up, but to think about those folks that we can actually bless. Have you gotten a sense, have you spent any time thinking about how you have benefited from serving? How a life that has spent 27 years, done 27 trips to Ghana and gone and visited people and seen some of these conditions, how you have been blessed by that in a way that money can't buy, in a way that all the things that everyone promises us is going to do it for us and satisfy us.
I think absolutely that those things are intangible, and you cannot put a price on. And every time I go is a new adventure, and you think, gee, what is it that the Lord, what would you have me do today? And you would find that yourself, you are blessed much, much more than they are. And I recall one time I did a retreat, and I started off the retreat with a $20 bill, and I said, if I were going to give this $20 bill away, who would like to have it? And everybody in the room raised their hand. And then I crumbled it all up, and I said, now who wants it? And of course, it's the same. And then I spit on it and stomped on it and did everything. And who wants it now? And everybody still wants it. Well, my point was, that's what God considers you to be. Your value to him never diminishes no matter what you do. Well, I didn't give them the money away, and they reminded me of that because we broke for supper, and they said, you know, Uncle Jim, you said that, but you never gave the money away. Well, I didn't say that I was going to give it away. I said, if you missed that. But I thought, well, they thought so.
That was my ride to the airport, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta.
So after supper, we went in, and this young man was standing there, and I said, several of you have mentioned to me that I didn't give the money away. Well, I'm going to give it to this young man. And I printed it out. And then I sat down, and somebody else was talking, or they were singing or something. And I thought to myself, gee, that was kind of stupid, because there's John over there, and John's an older gentleman, and he could use the 20. And here's Mary, who's an officer, and maybe you should have given it to her, and you didn't give that very much thought. Why didn't you do that? And so then the retreat went on for 2 days, and then at the end of the day, they were all taking the picture, and they wanted to take one. This young man came up, and he said, Uncle Jim, I want to take a picture with you. Maybe you don't remember me. And I said, certainly I remember you. Why wouldn't you?
I gave you $20.
Yeah, you're the young man who got the $20. And he said, yes. He said, this weekend is the harvest at my church. And the harvest is when you give money for the year. And he said, I didn't have any money. And he said, I've been praying that the Lord would give me something.
Wow.
And I thought, you know, this is what prayer is all about. You ask the Lord. And so my prayer life has been greatly, let's say, it's much greater than it used to be. And it's more important to me to pray about everything. And so I, like Mother Teresa, I pray all the time, but I do more than listen, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I haven't been to Ghana or Africa at all. I've been to Haiti, I've been to Guatemala. I've been to a number of places where people have an awful lot less. They're not as afflicted with affluenza, and they tend to do a lot more praying, a lot more listening, and you get to see the way God answers that, and how their dependence on him he never fails. He never fails. It's unbelievable. It's humbling.
It is, indeed.
Big time. Big time. So a lot of people, I think, have problems with Christians. They have problems with the church. They see us kind of arguing and fighting over all kinds of things and making a big stink out of all kinds of issues that they think probably aren't all that important. But stuff like this, I think everybody can get behind. Why do you think they don't know about this stuff as much, or they or do they not give it as much weight? Or
well, I think a lot of people go through their busy life and they get so wrapped up in what they're doing that they, unlike Mother Teresa, don't listen. And if you listen, then the Lord will show you the people who need help and it may be just a smile, or it may be a handshake, or maybe it's a little. And one of the things that I have done recently, or since joining the prison ministry, is I've noticed and I listen, and people say, yeah, but now you have a target on your back. Well, maybe you do. but maybe you should.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should listen to what that person has. Maybe that person is just what you need to help. And I've helped several people who I think probably are in a much better position today than they were when I first met them. And I think I know that I am, because that's what it's all about, is helping other people. And I think that this is what the church is and should be. You become something to someone else. You become a friend, and you become their mentor, or perhaps just a friend. Just you listen to what they have and their problems, and you ask the Lord while you're listening, I need some guidance here because I don't know. I'm way over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. And you will always get an answer to how to help that person. And that's what you do.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's the church should exist for someone else. Just like Jesus existed for, and I'm not saying like he existed, and I'm not throwing into going into the doctrinal stuff there. He's always, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, the Word was God, all that kind of eternal stuff. I'm not trying to, but Jesus, as his main purpose, was that he came, he was involved in life on this planet for others. Everything was about others, and the way institutions work is they tend to become there for themselves.
Exactly.
Or for the members of the institution. And what a great reminder to just put that out there for our brothers and sisters in Christ that may stumble upon this, but also for those that aren't out there thinking about Jesus or know Jesus or believe in Jesus or follow Jesus, any of those things, that we know. We got the same beef with the institution that you do, actually. I don't know. I had this conversation. There's an atheist friend of mine who comes in and we talk actually a little bit here and have some interesting conversations, sometimes about faith and religion and sometimes not. But we had one conversation where it happened to be the 500th anniversary of not the Reformation itself, but there was an event in the Reformation called the Diet of Worms, and it was where the Lutheran or the Protestant princes were saying essentially to the emperor, you know what, here's what we believe, and if you have to kill us, fine, but this is what we believe. So it was really, they were standing for their faith and everything. And then we got into this conversation about the Reformation, and it dawned on me, and we got to this point where I was basically saying, there are these dueling narratives, these dueling Christianities always. There's sort of a true Christianity and a false one. And you talked earlier a little bit about a sermon somebody was given on Satan and things, and 3 things Satan does. And one thing, he definitely gets us twisted up in lies and tries to convince us of things that aren't true or just part of the truth or things like that. And I think people get lost on the fact that we're actually within the church always going to do battle with what it really means to follow Jesus and what it means to be a religious person, belong to a club versus following the servant of all servants.
Yeah, I remember because the condemned prisoners in Ghana do not know when they're going to be executed. They have a different attitude about religion and different things, and they could care less who is giving the sermon, whether it's a Catholic or whether it's a Lutheran or whether it's Baptist, because we all go and we serve, but we always they put labels on us. And I remember one time they asked, you had to introduce yourself at the retreat, and the officers were to give their rank and their position. And when it came to our executive director, who was the last person, he stood up and he said, "My name is Chris Hesse, and I'm a foot soldier for the Lord."
Nice.
Well, that stuck with me all these years, and that was 25 years ago. And if you're not a foot soldier for the Lord, then you should be. and it's very easy. It's easy for me, but it'd be hard the first time. But yeah, I would encourage everybody to reach out to someone and say, this is what I want to help you. How can I help?
Yeah.
How can I be of service to you?
And those people, more and more, I actually had a message from a family member in another country, and he's exploring Christianity now, and he's stumbled upon a number of different teachers and preachers that he's kind of following and listening to, and he was asking me kind of for advice. Hey, I'm exploring this. You're a pastor, and so I thought you'd be a good person to ask some of these questions. I hope so. I don't know. We'll see. But in our exchange, I said something like, here's a guy from this background. Here's a guy from this background. Here's a Presbyterian. Here's a Catholic. Here's a Lutheran. Here's, a variety of different people. And I said, I may have some problems with some of their theology where I disagree, but that's where we are today with the institution. There's so many things that there are so many problems and so many things we're fighting over and arguing over, but then there's so much that we actually agree on. And really, you just go around and you do have to kind of pick the best of the best and find those people that seem to grasp what Jesus was about, his love, his mercy, his grace, and then seeing it kind of in action. Doesn't matter where they're coming from. I don't care where they're coming from. I've had Catholics around this table, Presbyterian now, sort of. I won't out you.
Don't spread that around too much, because as soon as I told Pastor that I serve on the Emerging African Ministry Subcommittee, and if the Presbyterian Church ever finds out that I don't attend a Presbyterian church, they'll probably excommunicate me, if there's such a thing But I know what you're saying. And I heard a sermon one time that said several denominations were together, and if you say, what is it that we agree upon?
Mm-hmm.
And you go down the list, then you get down to the bottom of the things you don't agree upon, and they're trivial. They're not important. We agree that Jesus Christ is the head of the church. So that's number one. And you go from there. And when you get down to the bottom, then you find that the denominations are not that much different.
The more I've had conversations with different people, the more I've realized there have been a few moments where I'm like, yeah, but no, that's not right. And I've kind of pushed back a little bit. And then I've stepped back later and I went, I think we may actually be trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
We just say it differently. We're trying to express something that is really inexpressible. If we are these finite beings trying to comprehend and communicate infinite ideas or share an infinite person, right? How are we going to do justice to that? How are we ever going to nail it down? How are we ever going to,
I started a while ago to tell a story about the condemned prisoners, and the last time they had an execution, the executioner came and read off the names of 7 individuals who were going to be executed that day. And the rest of the condemned cell prisoners began weeping and praying. And this group of 7 individuals started singing hymns because they knew where they were going. and that's a whole other story, and I could tell another story about that. But
Yeah.
they were led out on a wagon to be shot, and as they were going, they were singing hymns, and they wanted to witness to their brothers, hey, we know what's going to happen to us. We know where we're going. We're going to be with the Lord, and we're going to be with him very shortly. And that's the message of the prison ministry and of all ministries. Indeed, you are someday, and we're just passing through this lifetime, and it's just in the blink of an eye we're gone, but we will live in eternity with the Lord, and that's what we're preparing for.
So you made me think of something that I heard a Presbyterian preacher say. You never realize that Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you have.
True, very true.
And hearing stories like that and having seen people in situations like that, I think we look at all that we have and think, well, look at what all I have, as if that matters.
Yeah.
And then we sort of clutter our heads, our eyes, our space with stuff and things and activities and people and all that kind of stuff. And we lose sight of the only thing we really need. And that's Jesus. I don't know. I think we would all do well to be around. You probably got way more out of being around folks in these places.
Oh, yes.
And I think what your story also tells, as we see how powerfully God is at work in some of these desperate situations, people are often looking for God in high places. They're looking for God in power and in authority and in success and in so many things. Oh, if I can just climb this mountain and meditate at the top of this mountain, I'll connect with God or the universe or some kind of spiritual connection. But meanwhile, what Jesus says is that if you want to see God, you got to get low. You got to get with the weak, the poor, the people with nothing. It's not that God is too high for us that we can't find him. It's that he's too low for us and we don't want to find him there. And I think your story illustrates that. Your ministry, God is where the least are. As you did it for one of the least of these, Jesus says you did it for me. And you shared that last week at the SMA meeting. So
yeah, and another story about Mother Teresa was when she was in the streets. There was a fellow in the gutter who had a gangrene injury, and it was gangrenous, and it was terrible. And the reporter said to her, "Oh, Mother Teresa, I wouldn't do that for all the money in the world." And she looked at her and she said, "Neither would I." But she was doing it because that's what Jesus would have done.
Yeah, wow. We have that mindset in America where you couldn't pay me enough to do that. Well, we're not offering first, and what if there's something that money can't buy for us to get out of this? Jesus, to see God at work. Wow. Well, I don't want to keep you all day. I'm sure you're a busy man doing all kinds of stuff here and around the world. If there's a way that I can help or be a part of it, is there any way that people can support what you're doing? Is there some kind of page that accepts donations?
Actually, there is a the Prison Ministry of Ghana.org is a website, and we soon will have a method of which they can do payment for. And right now we're collecting money because we're building halfway homes, and we're building 2 halfway homes. We have land for 2 halfway homes, and we're going to build a block making machine a block making service.
Cinder blocks?
Yeah, cinder blocks.
Silicon.
And we also will have a farm, and we hope that will sustain the ministry throughout. And we're going to ask for donations.
So that they can kind of earn their own money to sustain the ministry.
When they make the blocks, we have 2 prisons that make blocks, and this will be made. The first one at the halfway home will be like this, and they have the local contractors and block makers have complained that we have a captive market in the labor, which we do, but they have tested the blocks, and they found that the blocks that we make are much better than the regular blocks. So the government is buying all their blocks from us. So we want to build another. I'll tell a quick story about this. The halfway home is in the northern part of Ghana, and the chief, we went to see him and we had hoped that he'd give us maybe 5 acres or 10 acres. And on the outside, we thought, wouldn't it be great if he gave us 25 acres? We could really do something with that. And so we went to visit the chief, and we took him the customary whiskey and money. And as we were leaving, he asked me to stay behind, and he said, if you do 3 things for me, I'll see that you get some land. And he said, I want you to build a school, and number 2, build a church, and number 3, do something for the young people in my village to employ them. And so they have a Rotary Club in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, built the school, and I helped them, but they built the school, and they are building a church in the village, and the block making will support, and some of his young people work there. And he gave us 625 acres of land. And I said, Lord, thank you again for that 2x4, because what in the world am I going to do with 600 acres of land? And so we are planning the block making project, and we are planning on farming and doing all sorts of things. So hopefully that will then sustain the ministry. That's
unbelievable. And I think there's actually, as you were telling that story, it reminded me of another story you told that I think would be a great way to close out. That, we think that we can't make a difference, or we think there are things that are so big and so challenging, and we're thinking about, like you said, an acre or 5 acres, 10 acres, 25 acres, and then 625 acres. You remember the story about the church? You told the story about the church that they wanted you to build.
We had come by, and again, if you listen and you see what people then want you to do and what the Lord wants you to do, and we found this little church, a Presbyterian church, and it had an X on it, a red X, and it was in the road. And so we were going to build, we thought, hey, maybe the Lord is telling us that we need to move this church. And so we went to the elders of the village, and we asked them for land. And they gave us some land, and I went over, and I was made an honorary member of the building committee, even though they'd already met. And they had plans for a church with a sanctuary that would seat 1,500 people. And they were 75 members, including children. And there was a lot of children, too. And so we said, they said, let's cut it down. And I said, no, if they said that, let's build it the way you want to build it. Seat 1,500. Well, they dug out the foundation for the church, and they found that one of the streams ran into that. And it was a swamp, basically. So they had to dig it all out, and they filled it with sand. And then they had to have water. And water is a precious, precious commodity and very expensive. And they had run out of money because that church was built, and it stands today with it seats 1,500, but it was built, 60% of the money came from within Ghana.
Wow.
And so I was there, and they were going to have a meeting the next night, and they didn't know what they were going to do. They needed water. In order to buy water, they didn't have any money, so they couldn't buy water. So they said, we'll get together and we'll pray. And they prayed for water, for the Lord would show them some way that this structure could continue, that they'd have to have water to pack the sand down that they filled this hole with. And it was about a week later or 2 weeks later, the construction man, he told us, the construction superintendent, and this is during the dry season in Ghana. And I don't know if anybody has ever been to a country where they have a distinct dry season. Never in the history of records being kept had it ever rained during this period, in this 5-month period. And you look in the sky and you see blue, and there's not a cloud. There's no clouds because they have no rain. And the construction supervisor expressed to us that he was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was working, and they were just killing time because they really couldn't do much because they didn't have any water. And he noticed that there was a little black cloud over in the west. And he thought, gee, that's strange. I've never seen a cloud over there. And he looked at that. And so he went back to work. And then he noticed in the east, there's another cloud, a little black cloud. And he thought, wow, that really is strange. And over a period of an hour, those two clouds came together, and right over top of him dumped what we estimate to be 8 inches of water, of rain. And you could walk,
Wow.
you could walk 30 yards in any direction, and you would find dust. And it rained in that one specific area. And if I said to myself, boy, you better rethink your prayer life because the Lord answers prayers. And through the prison ministry, we could write a book literally about the things that the Lord has accomplished through that ministry.
And I think he tends to be where his work is taking place, you know. Wow. Yeah, the expectation of these folks for 1,500. And what is it at today? You said it's not 1,500,
they're
but they're
about 675, I think.
So 600, from 75 to 675. So they're on their way.
Yeah.
This idea of expectation with that and with the prayers. And Jesus said to the woman at the well, or after the woman at the well, to the disciples, because they had gone to get food, and they come back, and he's like, I have food you know nothing about.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a sec, I thought you sent us to get food. Jesus had to have been like half stand-up comedian, half rabbi, I'm sure he was messing with them sometimes. But wow, the food that they knew nothing about was Jesus doing the will of God, doing God's work, and being about that, and seeking and serving and saving the lost. And sounds like that's what you're trying to do over there. Sounds like it's had a pretty powerful impact on you. And certainly just hearing the story, I am, it's having an effect on me. And, there are folks listening that are saying the same thing. So keep it up. Keep telling your story. Anytime you want to give us an update, you're welcome back. We can send folks to prisonministryofghana.org, yes. All spelled out, prisonministryofghana.org, and contribute to this great work. And look forward to having you back to share what else God is doing, what he's up to there, and hope that's sooner than later.
Well, we never know what he's up to, but we'll listen.
Listen?
Tell us.
Yeah, listen.
Thank you very much.
And we'll find out. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, y'all. Great to be with you. Great to share Jim here with you and all that he's doing and all that God's up to. God is at work. It may not always seem like it, but boy, is he at work. And he wants us to be at work too, spreading the good news and sharing the love of Jesus with the least of these. I hope this is an encouragement for you to do that, to listen, to believe, to trust, to expect him to come through. He will all the time. God bless you. Hope to catch up with you real soon. See ya.